Welcome to hell, Jimmy.
Look who we have on the podcast. Look, this is the good ending, as they say in video games.
Fellas, did I not prove my point? I gave you somebody actually outrageous to poke fun at. Which was funnier?
Listen, if you want to console him, he's right here. He's right here.
I already consoled him. That's why I went over to him on the couch and I put my hand on his shoulder to give him strength.
In a single video, you've generated more memes. I think you've probably, there's maybe a good 3 years of memes now.
Who is this guy? He's got like every meme ever produced on the internet.
Let's name them. 3 hours of sleep, and that has to be in some way related to sex.
That's a meme?
Oh, yeah.
If we want to have sex before I go to sleep, now I get 3 hours of sleep.
Every single comment is like, I only got 3 hours of sleep. You're like, that's my life, not a meme.
Can I just say real quick, on top of the memes and everything that I'm finding out about this currently, because I don't know nothing about Reddit, if we start talking bad about James Rolfe in this interview, I'm going to snap.
Mrs. Nerd got a body on her. Yeah, she got a body on her.
And very, very respectfully, I would try to be very respectful when I say this, but Mrs. Nerd got a body on her. Yeah, Mrs. Nerd got a body on her. What did they do for that meme?
Just saying it. It's just a funny turn of phrase. Miss Nerd got a body on her.
So it's a meme, like with a picture of me, or they're just saying that sentence?
No, you just repeat it at one another ad nauseum for several years.
Yeah, like no time, 540.
I don't understand what's so hilarious about this. Time is the productive man's enemy. I guess it's the loser's luxury.
Revenge of the Sith will do just fine.
I'd say if you're not into the Bible, Revenge of the Sith will do just fine.
Jimmy, of course, you can thank me for that one. Again, it's more of a written meme. And look, I'm gonna just ask you, 11,000 views is what you're worth. I would say that's another good meme.
Oh, good for you guys. Here's one with 11K. That's about what you're worth.
What does that mean?
I was just riffing on no sleep, I think. I was just going with it. I average 5 hours of sleep a night, 4 hours of sleep instead of 5. Now I get 3 hours of sleep. On my last film, we did not sleep. Nobody slept. I am on 4 hours sleep right now because of everything I had to do this week. 4 hours of sleep every night this week.
11,000 is about what you're worth.
We're coming up on what, 22K on you guys clowning me for an hour, so I think we're above 11,000.
We also, there's been a spin-off meme. So you responded to us with a lot of good humor, which is kind of why we've become unlikely allies. You can't be downstairs. We have 2 kids now. You can't be downstairs making fun of no SNES games anymore. You got to come up.
Dude, the guy in the cowboy hat is killing me.
I had you for somebody with no sense of humor.
I don't understand what's so hilarious about this.
Really, what I learned is you're from New England. You're from Connecticut. And so, of course, you have a sense of humor.
I have no sense of humor about James.
I've learned that, yeah.
That persists. He's just a guy doing his best.
Well, look, I had said on the Patreon, I said, can you imagine how bad this guy's farts must smell?
Wrong.
Which is different than Dan Olson, who thinks his farts don't stink. See, it's the inverse of that. But I said, I was like, it must be the creatine. And you were like, well, let me set you straight on all that. Can you imagine how bad the farts must smell? I'm thinking like omega-3 fatty acids, creatine, some massive protein shake.
This was the bit that offended me the most. They're wrong. I designed my diet in a way where I fart like twice a week when nobody's around. I don't think farts are funny. I don't think they're fun.
And you described a diet that prevents farts outright. And we decided that would be something called Farmaxxing, where Looksmaxxing is maximizing the way you look. Fartmaxxing would be maximizing so you never have to fart at inopportune times. Maybe not ever at all, actually. Thoughts?
I suppose, yeah. I mean, I live off of red meat and water, and it is essentially a no-fart lifestyle, which I try to maintain. So that's not the key purpose of doing that. There's a lot of other different reasons. I'm sort of chronically sick, and it helps keep weight off of me.
You're sick all the time?
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me.
Like you get like head colds and stuff?
I don't know what's wrong with me, but the poor whites don't have great insurance, so they just tell you at the doctor's office to drink more water and fuck off.
Well, look, I'm just going to say what the comments are going to say. It's probably the sleep deprivation.
It bothers me, though, because when you hear about ultra-productive men that, like, are CEOs of companies and they sleep in their office and then they get up off the floor and go right back to work, and I don't know. These guys don't seem like they're sick all the time. They seem like they could perform optimally on lack of sleep, and not me.
There was a period of my life where I had a cold every day, it felt like, and it was when my child was like 2. when she was just she'd go to a daycare or a preschool, and she was bringing home every illness possible. And it was the kind of, like that despair you feel when you just got over a cold, and then there's like a tickle in the throat 3 days after it was all done, and you're like, you got to be fucking kidding me. Are we on to another 2.5 weeks of sickness here?
I actually know very, very little about Looksmaxxing. I had heard, like everybody else had, that he used methamphetamine to try to get handsomer, which I don't consider myself that handsome, and I've never tried methamphetamine.
Looksmaxxing is the furthest extent that you could take self-improvement.
I don't know what that is either.
EJ had no clue. I had learned about it, I feel like maybe a week prior to talking about it, to mentioning it, because it was fresh on my mind. I was like, Looksmaxxing. This is what young people are doing? It was because this interview that I had clipped had gone somewhat viral, and yeah, he does meth. But he was already, that's a guy, this clavicular guy, this 20-year-old. He's already 6'2". He's already kind of a hunky guy. If you're Looksmaxxing past 90%, you're already there.
What the old pickup artist community guys used to preach is that looks don't matter, that you could be ugly and still pick up women if you learn how to be suave. So he's of the, I don't know if that's Gen Z, but that's the newer generation of how to get women and have game and all that.
I feel like what the entire culture has been doing for the last 15 years has been overcorrection. Yep. Overcorrection. Like, nobody can seem to get it right.
For sure. But here's what I will say, because I know all the Manosphere podcasters, like literally just about all of them except Tate. And I think I was going to do something with Kevin Samuels before he died.
What do you mean you know them?
Well, I worked with all of them.
What are they doing with you? Like lifting or what?
No, I was doing a satire series on YouTube, and I thought I need stars, but I don't have money for stars right now. And at the time, I didn't have as many connections. And I was like, why don't I just see if I could hire these guys and have them parody themselves? And then some of them became a few of my first investors. And then they roped me into the podcast space because they're like, you'll be great at this. And I did it for a little while because I guess I believe in most of their core ideas. But the reason I fell out of it is because something nobody seems to be able to identify about the Manosphere is they're all nerds too. It's just being nerdy about the psychological complexes of male and female dynamics and how attraction works down to the molecule.
So by nerdy, you mean overly analytical, let's say.
Yeah, but to the core, who a lot of them are, some of the more popular ones, they are nerds for the subject of the psychological conceptions of or the psychological concepts of masculinity and attraction and things like that. Though they themselves, a lot of them, 20 years married, all daughters, hardly get any guy time themselves, aren't picking up different women every other day. So yeah, they're a highly nerdy community. If you just swap out video games for like psychology of attraction and male and female dynamics, that's really what it is.
Well, don't you think the male brain is already kind of an autistic one like if we were to think of, I heard it once conceptualized as if there was a spectrum of like empathy on the like, let's say like radically feminine spectrum, and then like systemizing on the radically masculine spectrum. Like systemizing is kind of an autistic, wouldn't you say the average man is more autistic than the average female or something like that?
I kind of like the way George Carlin said it. He said, women are crazy and men are stupid.
Women are crazy, men are stupid. And the main reason women are crazy is that men are stupid. It's not the only reason, but it's a big one.
Women think that we're stupid because we're too logical to be emotionally intelligent, and they're too emotionally intelligent to be logical. So to women, we're always going to seem dumb, and they're always going to seem crazy to us with the difference in perception.
It's like we need each other.
Well, yeah, but then the Manosphere content is like what I just said right there, except turn it into 10 years worth of 9-hour podcasts.
Mostly podcasting, yeah.
Pretty much. Sometimes books. What drove me out of it was I'm like, this is too much. It's just the same information over and over again, and then they all get to arguing with each other, and it's strange.
I feel like that's a lot of like online communities. They get too lost in the sauce and become like stale, and you're like, I gotta take a break from this. I gotta step back from this.
Pretty much, yeah. But most of them are pretty nice guys, until they get like too into the weeds of it.
Too many 540 jokes. I want to ask a genuine question of you, because we spent an hour on a podcast psychologically analyzing you, trying to understand where you were coming from in your sleep deprivation.
We did not sleep. Nobody slept.
I got the impression from you, the strong impression, not a mistaken impression, I don't think, You hold a strong resentment for all things nerds, but you yourself either are one or were one.
For all you nerds, what kind of relationship do you think you're going to have? All you nerds. What do you think? You nerds are going to turn into Dolomite? These are nerds. I can handle a bunch of nerds. You were the nerd that became the school bully who's picking on the nerd. Now nerds are becoming the bullies. What happened to the YouTube gaming nerd community?
You mentioned being embarrassed of nerd stuff around your partner.
I don't let my women sit on the other side of the fucking camera while I'm doing this shit. I'm embarrassed by it. All right, here we are, fellas. Last level before the last boss. Last level before the last boss.
Sort this out for me. I am hearing and seeing a lot of resentment for nerds.
No, not a resentment for nerds. I just think that bullies have evolved. This is my theory on how nerds have become the bullies.
Yeah.
I think I'm definitely a nerd myself because a nerd different from a geek, I think by definition just means like being hyper obsessive about one particular thing you can't get enough of.
It's interesting. This is one of those like hotly debated like terminology things, but I always was under the impression that nerd more described like disposition, social awkwardness, and a geek was like, I'm a real geek about birds. And that means I love everything about birds.
I thought it was the opposite, or what I've always been told is that a geek...
Okay, well, that's extremely illuminating. Because that means that every time you said nerd, and you said the word a lot, every time you said it, you meant somebody obsessed with a particular topic.
Yeah, that like a geek is like the geeky appearance, like Jerry Lewis, and then a nerd could be... Right, and then a nerd could look like me or you or anybody if he seems almost somewhat unreasonably obsessed with like one particular thing, whether it's video games, comic books.
But you paired it with sexlessness.
Right, yeah, right, I did. But this is a bit of a rabbit hole. So the I'm trying to prove the point, which I think I did effectively. So I like to troll internet nerds by bullying them with the meathead stereotypes.
You are a meathead. A meathead, dead from the neck up. Meathead.
And it's only once you're arrogant with meathead stereotypes that they understand arrogance. Follow me through on this. So, in a world where nerds have become bullies without realizing it, it's okay to abuse each other on the fucking internet by saying things like, I have a higher IQ than you, I'm more technically proficient than you, I have a more extensive vocabulary than you, I'm morally superior to you, I have superior intelligence and a superior understanding of things.
I can Farmaxx better than you.
Well, I could have rigged up, like when the breakdowns of James and shit, like look how ineffective his system is, and I could have done this in a way more practical way, and
we'll talk about it.
In my mind, it's still saying I'm better than you.
You think it's bullying to observe a thing?
I'm saying it's still a way of putting yourself above somebody. It's still a way of saying I'm better than you, and there's a certain arrogance in it. But because it's intellectual arrogance, the nerd community does not see that as bullying, and you only understand it's arrogance if someone that looks like me comes out and says, you haven't gotten laid in a year, you can't lift as many weights as I can, you can't fight like I can, you can't do push-ups like I can. Pick on somebody your own size. The fuck is the matter with you? And because that's not intellectual, it's an unintellectual form of arrogance. It's like, what a dick, what a douchebag. But when you're a nerdy fellow who's bullying another nerdy fellow by saying, I have a more extensive vocabulary than you, I'm more practical than you, I have a higher IQ than you, because it seems to be intellectually based, it's not arrogant, and it's not rude, and it's not still fucking with people. The reason I think this happened, my theory is I think bullies have evolved. In my lifetime, I have no longer seen bullies want to pick on the weak. I think bullies have evolved to almost being like prison inmates, that if you're the type of person that wants to pick on someone or beat somebody up, you're going to want to look for somebody who seems equally yoked. Like there's no honor or challenge in picking on the weak anymore. So to me, somebody today who's maybe built like me that wants to go pick on a scrawny, nerdy looking fellow is a psychopath. But in the 1980s, it was just a Karate Kid villain. And I think because bullies have evolved to only want to fuck with equally yoked people who seem like they have an equal amount of ego. So it's like, why does this guy think his ego outmaxes my ego? Let me step to him and see if he can fight. Because that's more where bullies have gone, I think it left a vacuum. and the nerds have nothing to resist against anymore, so they're cannibalizing their own.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true to an extent. I think like, well, look, what about the whole thing where people say like, your speech was violence? Or suddenly they're turning like non-violent things like speech into violence. And I think the reason is because most people live life online. So if you're living a digital, non-physical life, well, then physical dominance suddenly isn't nearly as important as it once was. I still think that like snobbery, I think that's always been around. But maybe what you're saying is that like because we don't live as much in the physical realm anymore, that non-physical dominance thing has been kind of like broadened out. Maybe you see more of that.
Yeah, sort of. You see that humans tend to want to go at each other and prove that they can be superior to others. And the classic way to do that was always to look like me and maybe physically bully those that don't. Today, I think there's actually a lot less maybe physical bullying, a lot less of an attitude where like you kind of look at the response online. It's really no longer cool to be a dude with muscles and tattoos and be like, I bet you don't get pussy. I bet you can't lift weights like I can.
This dude seems like a real lady killer. I bet he gets more pussy than me or James.
Right.
We now have the intellectual understanding that that's dummy talk. And that's arrogant.
And you're saying that you're weaponizing that like deliberately? Like you're...
Yeah, because it proves the point. Now we've identified arrogance. But when you're intellectually putting yourself above somebody or morally putting yourself above somebody, you take like I think the nerds like to do it with intellect, and the politically consumed people like to do it with moral superiority. I'm better than you based on maybe how I voted, based on the issues that I support. It's all a form of arrogant pushing people around. But I think as society has become nerdy and more intellectual, as long as you're presenting your argument of why you're better than somebody with an extensive, wonderful vocabulary, and you sound very smart, and you sound like you have a high IQ, and you raise a decent point, it's like, well, it was just an observation. Whereas I still see through that, and I'm like, no, you guys are saying you're better than somebody. You guys are all saying you're better than James Rolfe, you're better than this person, you're better than that person. I don't think it's cool.
Yeah, I got that. Whatever disagreement you still hold with us, I think that there are examples of people that fit what you're describing to a T, or a lot more snugly than we do. You don't have to look far to find somebody who's actually being like needlessly, irrationally, insanely cruel to James in this particular case. So I think this is going to make sense. You made a movie called Rerouting. It's about a horror movie about an Uber driver and an Uber driver killer. There's spoilers. Can I like spoil like one thing?
Try. Come on, fuck it.
So fair warning, everybody. There's a sequence where your character finds an exploit on the app. It's actually not technically Uber, I think. I think it's just like miscellaneous driving app for licensing purposes.
Right.
Where he can collect the fare from somebody who didn't show up. And then because the people that died were last seen, in his log, he's brought in for questioning, and he's like the number one suspect, even though he didn't do it. Because he did something a little bit unsavory on the app. I think that's exactly what happened with Red Cow Entertainment. I think you got the wrong guy.
Yeah, we're Danny. You're getting pulled in the station.
You brought the wrong guy into the station. You're questioning the wrong people, and it's all because we did a little bit of mischief on the app. A little bit of mischief on the app.
Frankie, I thought that you were a virgin that lived in your mother's arcade basement because you looked like you were fucking 26 until a year and a half ago.
Look, for the record, we own these basements that we play video games in.
Yeah!
It's not our mother's basement.
And I barely play those. I bought them with money I earned, and then I let them sit.
Yeah, I get that. I take the point. I mean, truthfully, you guys are right about a lot of the things that you said about me. I only browsed a little bit of Red Cow Entertainment videos, but I'll tell you why. It wasn't because I was of lack of proper research necessarily. It was because, it's lack of sleep for sure. But I also looked at like as much as I could stomach of you guys talking about James, and then I turned it off because it was upsetting me. And then I didn't look at any more of them because I didn't want to be upset by it. Instead, I looked at Boxmax and the other stuff you guys did, and that's when I realized that you guys are more wholesome than like the true James Rolfe hate communities that exist online, which those get foul and I think irrational as fuck.
And guess what? They don't like us. They hate us. They fucking...
A lot of them do, yeah.
Every time it gets posted, they're like, these fucking grifters. They're finding ways to cash in. I'm like, cash in.
So, I take the point. We agree to disagree on the idea that criticism is like always positive, and that it's not, sometimes like snobby and a tad bit unwarranted. Criticism and the industry of film critics.
Do you think I'm dressing up my vocab like to seem like Dan Olsen or seem cool or something? This is just the way I talk, dude. I'm a little bit queer.
But you gotta watch out, because some pumpkins are queer.
Well, anyway, I think you guys have great content, but I didn't look at any of the other James stuff because I did not want it to upset me. I saw a thing you guys do. You call Monster Madness Monster Sadness. Are you trying to say Monster Madness is sad and pathetic?
Sponsored sadness.
Sponsored sadness.
I'm like, if I watch this,
Did you
I'm gonna
watch
get up.
those videos? Did you watch him sniffing Whoppers?
Yeah, it was fantastic. Like everything he does.
All right, well, let's learn more about that. The first nerd episode I ever saw was TMNT. I was in college, and I thought it was hysterically funny. And not just that, but I was like, oh, wow, you can do this? This is like, he actually produced a little show. It's not just like a viral video. Because back then it was like little viral animation, little viral video. And I was like, oh, no, he actually, yeah, it's in his bedroom, but he's being hilarious. And he's acting like he's, like heavily drinking while playing these games. And the NES, it had kind of been forgotten at that time. Because, of course, I grew up with it. People had forgotten about the NES for about a minute, and then only then it was like, oh yeah, those games were fucking unfair. They weren't just awesome.
Some game designer who's laughing their ass off just decided to put a pizza down there. Okay, well, what's the point? I mean, are you going to be suicidal enough to go and try to get that pizza?
But you would have been like 10 years old, right?
Probably somewhere around there, 10, 11, 12, something like that. And yeah, that man got himself a fan for life, particularly because he is one of those cats that so many people, they do feel a certain kinship with. It's like, I remember, my favorite video games from childhood. I remember stealing the family VHS camera that was supposed to be used for parties and weddings, and you made it your own because at 8 years old, you already knew you wanted to be a filmmaker. And I resonated with all of that heavily, even coming from a person who, on the exterior side, is not much like me and definitely didn't seem like he came from like a family like mine. Though maybe it was enough that he was also a Northeast cat. I feel very, Connecticut is the least interesting place in the Northeast. I don't know. I think sometimes we almost steal a little bit of Northeast pride that isn't ours to have. Like, at least we're close to Jersey and New York and Boston and Philly and everything else that is cool, even though it's not ours because nobody even really knows we're here.
You're a filmmaker. You've made 3 feature films before the age of 30.
Financially ruined my life 3 times over to make 3 feature films before 30.
You're finishing your 3rd one, and there were 2 before that. We've watched Rerouting.
Oh, thank you.
So when did you actually get into film and were like, I'd actually like to take a stab at this behind the camera? And like, how instrumental was James in that? Just like becoming interested in being a filmmaker?
He didn't make me interested in being a filmmaker. I already knew that was like my path in life before I found him. So
very young age.
Right. And that's why there was like that instant ability to resonate. Because I was already there. I had already, so if you're 11, 12, 13 years old by the time you find James Rolfe and you're watching Cinemassacre 2000 and, the 3000 version with the giant green thing in the park and all right, all of these sorts of things. Yeah. Yeah, you resonate because you're already there. You already passed the point of running around with the family VHS camera at 5, 6, 7 years old, and you already know this is what you want to do with your life. So to see somebody that was older than me that had already been through that stage, and now they're on to the next stage. Then he got to make a feature. Yeah.
Cinemassacre 200 might be my favorite YouTube video ever made, maybe.
Yeah, right.
Just because I resonate with it so much. But what was interesting, because of my age, DVD was really instrumental. I became interested because of Trey Parker, Cannibal the Musical, Trauma movies, because all of those were kind of like, oh, well, if they can do, if you're allowed to just splatter ketchup or something, then, and that's a movie, then I guess I can make a movie. I have a friend who, he always says, like, nobody's ever watched a Stanley Kubrick movie and said, like, oh, I ought to give it a try. Like, they're amazing movies, but they're not accessible. Much like, if you want to be a musician, maybe the Ramones is more accessible than, somebody else. So like behind the scenes DVDs, commentaries, all that sort of stuff. And then it turned out that this guy on the internet who was also paving this whole new thing on the internet, he had all those exact same motivators and influences that I did. So it was more like a kindred spirit than it was. I think that maybe there are people that are even younger than you who like they weren't really that into movies. They actually got into YouTube, and he was like a YouTube influence. I think there's like some of that too, maybe.
Yeah, and maybe somebody that appeals to the nerd in me. Whereas my favorite filmmakers and my favorite films were made by filmmakers who were people that came from chaos, like I come from chaos. So you watch mainstream filmmakers or maybe mainstream comedians, and these are usually people who had like a fucked up upbringing, and it's part of what gave them material to be able to perform and stories to tell. So that I identified with when watching mainstream film or television or celebrities or things of this nature, because like I said, I come from, we were around the crack and the hoes and the heroin.
Tricks.
And, I grew up around crack and heroin and hose turning tricks in the walk-in freezer. But who is there to appeal to like the nerd in me who can obsess over Castlevania or Dracula or things of that nature? That's where James caught me, I think.
You were a big video game guy?
Never been a big video game guy. You know what I've been? I'm a guy that I used to collect. I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but I would collect like 1,000 comic books and just look at them and be like, wow, I collected them, and never read one. And if you were to give me James's entire Nintendo collection, I would take it, proudly put it up in my house, and maybe play 3 of those games.
I get that. Yeah.
I don't know if you would just call that being a collector, because I assume not all collectors are playing every single game in their collection. So no, really never been a video game guy aside from my love for 2 games that really stuck with me, and that's pretty much just Sly Cooper and Castlevania. And honestly, I don't relate to how anybody can become so addicted to the plethora of different kinds of games that there are. There are only so many games that if I put it on and I play it, I can't put it down. It's about maybe Castlevania, Sly Cooper, and Super Mario. Other than that, I have to really try to tailor my focus to sticking through the difficulty of a video game, and it stresses me out.
Yeah, I completely relate. I mean, I'm very. That was another thing where I was like, "This is fun." I wonder if he knows this. How could he possibly know this about me? But like, I think that video games can be really insidious, in that they're especially modern games where they're designed, with the sort of the reward feedback to make you think that you're actually chopping wood or doing something productive.
Yeah,
or
like Animal Crossing, where you're like designing your house. And it's like you could just be working on your own house. Like,
yeah, it tells your brain that you did work on your own house. Your brain doesn't know the difference, so you can waste 9, 10, 12 hours. And just be like, all right, I'm feeling pretty good, at least at first. So I think, I do think that men in particular can be really susceptible to that. And so, yeah, of course, like anybody that I think has like a full plate of responsibilities is going to be acutely aware of how each hour in the day is spent. If you're not acutely aware of how each hour in the day is spent, then you will waste them, and you're not going to make a lot of progress on what you want to make progress on. For me, I want like quick, sick thrills. I want platforms. I want something that's just like quick. And then as soon as I die, or as soon as there's like a difficulty spike, I'm like, fuck you. Enough. Something else now.
Frankie gets in trouble on the Discord because he's like, you should probably limit video games to 2 hours a day. And there's some people who freak out about
They won't hear it. They won't fucking hear it.
I can't relate to it being difficult to not limit the games to 2 hours a day, because I'm so hard pressed to find a game that grips me in a way where I'm like, fuck, I just don't want to put it down. Yeah. And the only game that grips me like that is Sly Cooper, Mario, or Castlevania. Like Mario, the classic Mario, as I tell people all the time, if you consider yourself a fan of platforming games, but you were born too late to appreciate the Nintendo versions, like no matter how old you are, if you pick those games up, they're so tough to put down. And I think when I say I've never been a guy that wanted to bring out the video games around the women, I think it's because I don't think there's anything cool about zoning out into like Call of Duty and like the presence of your woman who might want to like spend some time with you or talk with you, and just like zoning out and be like, yeah, babe, hold on, I'm on with the fellas. And by the way, I'm not only retro, I'm actually factually behind the times. I checked out of technology like 10 years ago, and by the time I checked back in, I didn't know how to work a PlayStation.
Why did that happen?
I lost interest.
In technology, period.
I lost interest. PlayStation 3 and the PSP is state-of-the-art technology to me. So I have never connected via the internet on a video game with somebody. Like the boys, they get on, like, you know, my friends and my brothers, they get on the video game and they connect it. They could be playing with people from around the world.
Yeah, I understand the concept.
And they're talking, and they can talk shit, and the microphone.
Nah, see, what happens, Frankie, is they put on the headsets. You know, like headsets, they have headphones, and then they connect. And then they're, like, doing, like, game stuff.
I swear, that's how...
I swear they can do it.
That is how unfamiliar I am with it. But when I've got friends that do that in front of their girlfriends and their wives, and they're either completely, like, tuning out everybody in their home to play this for hours at a time, or... because you can talk shit on the headset with people from around the world, they're screaming at the fucking television, and they're like screaming obscene shit at their friends. And something I also don't understand about the nerd culture of the gaming nerds on the internet and the YouTube comment section is I sometimes see somebody comment like, oh, you thought what this content creator said was foul, but it's okay because I've heard so much worse on Xbox Live. So there's like a subculture of that kind of shit also, that you can scream like racial obscenities as long as it's on Call of Duty. It's considered like par for the course. I don't understand any of this.
How many divorces do you think cited video game playing in their filings? I bet you a lot.
Well, I know sometimes what happens is the women smash the PlayStations. I've seen if you could look up that online, that eventually they lose their patience.
Oh, this is a genre?
They lose their patience. You look up the compilations of the women that finally lost it, and they smashed the PlayStation, and the guy is like, he's like beside himself. He's trying to pick up the pieces of the PlayStation.
I'm gonna hit you guys with, I was just having a really interesting conversation with my wife about relationships in general. One of the things you always hear about with marriages that are in dire straits is that there's an uneven distribution of workload. You know, normally it's the wife feels like, I have to make the lunches, I'm doing laundry too, and then you come, and a lot of times it's like, and you come home and play video games when I need you to be on, because I've been, you know, and I also have a job or a part-time job or a full-time job too, especially now. So there's like an unequal distribution of work. And I think that it's, you know, like the remedy that people have offered is like, well, then everything should be split 50-50. But I think that's often unrealistic because people have their proclivities. I don't think there's such a thing as like, I cook half the time and you cook half the time. I think it's like somebody owns cooking, you know, like somebody with the proclivity to cook is going to, and the other person can come in, you know, when someone has a migraine or something. So I think give up on this idea that it's going to be 50-50 or there's going to be equity in any relationship, actually, like friendships too. Like there's not often equity in all things, right? It's just not really realistic.
Maybe I could get a job too.
You? Who's gonna make dinner?
I'd still cook dinner.
Who's gonna do the laundry?
Well, I would.
Who's gonna vacuum?
Me.
Well, as long as we're still splitting everything equally, then sure.
But I think that where it becomes a problem is like, let me paint a scenario. Let's say that you have a husband who works full-time, makes the majority of money. He may or may not smash SNES games in the basement.
We have 2 small children now. We do not spend enough time together as a couple and as a family with our children because you're playing Nintendo in the basement, shitting on SNES cartridges the same way you did when you were 26 years old, and shit's got to change. Because I'm not happy.
But he makes the majority of the money, and let's say she works part-time and does like lunches, laundry, cooking, you know, most domestic responsibilities, and she like puts the kid to sleep every night, right? And the guy, like maybe he works in the evenings or something, or he catches up in the evenings. If that's the agreement, so that has to be communicated first. This is who owns what, because if that goes uncommunicated and she just happens to be doing all the work at home and he's doing none of it, and that was never established, well then guess what? Like resentment is going to build, right?
Yeah.
So I think here's where husband and wife need to both like show up. If she is having a horrible day and she's like, hey, would you mind putting the child to sleep tonight? If he goes, or he goes, or he hesitates at all, it really throws, it shadows everything she's been doing as like acts of love, acts of service, as kind of taken for granted. And suddenly like those are not acts of service anymore. That's being saddled with responsibilities. So that's probably going to build resentment right there. He needs to be like, yeah, totally, of course. And then the exact inverse of that is she needs to actually go ahead and ask, hey, can you do bedtime tonight? Because I had a horrible day today. Can you do bedtime tonight? Instead of the all too common, look at this piece of shit. Like, like he's playing Sly Cooper and it's almost bedtime. And I'm going to see if he offers to put her to bed. I bet he's not even noticing how horrible of a day I have. He didn't even ask me how my day was. Right. And that's another way resentment builds. I guess in both cases, the wife ends up resenting the man. But,
yeah, because women can be very complicated, and there are very, very few mature women who were raised to communicate things like this to their men. It's very common for a woman to feel that if he loved me and if he was paying attention to me, he would already know what it is I'm upset about through observation, which would mean that he cares.
But in the interest of fairness, I think like men do tend to be a little bit stoic or a little bit like emotionally unavailable. I think a little bit of sensitivity goes a long way. Mm-hmm. And in her case, a little bit of let me communicate something that I think should be taken for granted also goes a long way. All you need to do is if both people just step outside of their natural proclivities just a little bit, like you can totally meet in the middle. And this is not like a frequent common problem. And yeah, that's the other thing that seems to happen if you talk to people with bad relationships is I think because women tend to be really agreeable too, like culturally or whatever, or socially, they'll go along and tolerate it for a good long while. And then they'll suddenly kind of be like, I have to break up with him. I'm done with him. Like, I hate him.
Yeah, they'll wait for it to pile up.
So that's my, you know what? I think like what I just said, just that like outlining that scenario, I think like if everybody just takes that to the bank, divorce will be cured.
Well, exactly, and that's the thing. I do try to consider my woman and the effort that she puts in. So, the night before I made the video about you guys, I came home from work and the house was spotless. And since I am not actually Andrew Tate in the flesh, I don't walk in the house and go, good, as you should.
You're grateful and you want to express your gratitude.
And in my mind, I'm thinking, I've gotten like 4 hours of sleep every night this week, and I'm trying to do post-production, but I told myself if I'm going to do YouTube, I got to do one YouTube video a week. Otherwise, the algorithm's not going to carry it and it'll be pointless. So tomorrow I got the James Rolfe video scheduled, but she just cleaned the whole house. I'll sit and talk with her for a second. A second turned into an hour, and I'm like, fuck, I just lost another hour. Then I'm like, okay, we got to go to bed. And then she starts wanting to fool around, and I'm like, actually so terrorized by my schedule, I'm literally sitting there thinking, and now she's upset because she's seen this shit on the internet. Now she knows this is what I think of our love life.
We want to have sex before I go to sleep. Now I get 3 hours of sleep.
But I'm sitting there thinking, if we have sex right now I'm not going to get to sleep until like 5 o'clock in the fucking morning because I get home at 2. And yeah, these are all the things that transpire.
Sex doesn't have to be this slow and long, by the way.
Oh, what?
We can have some quick old guy sex.
Not after she just cleaned the whole house. You got to start with the foreplay and the poetry. Like I like to tell her that she makes my heart beat the way taking too much steroids and too much nicotine does, and she finds that charming. And
she's like, yeah. This is nice.
I just want to take a second to explain something. I come home from work very late at night. The living room was a mess when I left. I come home, and it's immaculate. She cleaned the whole house because she wanted me to come home to a clean house, and I'm very grateful for that. However, it is now 3:10 in the morning. But now when I go in that room, she's going to want to talk about our day, and she's going to want to make love. And unless I'm going to be the biggest asshole in the world and reject her after she just cleaned the whole house, I'm losing time. What time do you think we're going to get to bed? If you want to fool around tonight, we have to be done by 5:40.
Why?
Because I can't keep doing this.
Why 5:40?
Because it's 3:10 now.
It's just like a random time.
Yeah.
We go through all that, 10 hours of work, an hour of talking. Let's say somewhere between a half hour to an hour of sex. What's the difference? Either way, I got no fucking time, just like James Rolfe, which is why we relate. And then I told myself, I'm like, okay, I've always wanted to do this video where I'm going to get to the bottom of why it's become cool to talk bad about James Rolfe, because when I was a kid, he was the shit, and now apparently in my adulthood, he's not. So I get all the clips prepared. I wake up after sleeping for like 3 hours, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to look at this and sort of riff and improv. And then you're totally right in your assessment of me, because as soon as I found out the reason is because they're making fun of him for having no time, I'm half asleep myself because I have no time and I'm trying to do this video, and I internalized all of it. And I'm like, this is what it is? He's got no time? All right, let's go through the schedule. And I fucking lost it.
Well, you know what this means? We are anti, even though I'm not anti-James. We're anti-James grifters. You're now a pro-James grifter. At this point, your YouTube channel is succeeding on the merits of a one James Rolfe. It's just that we're carrying his legacy forward as a threesome.
Yeah, the one thing that you don't understand in your psychological assessments of me, which though
What don't I get?
thus far they have been very accurate, but the main reason I'm like this is because I have a father who is like the real life George Costanza. And it bled into me. And so the only way I know how to express myself is in these long-winded, outrageous, very intense monologues.
Air your grievances.
The airing of grievances. Yeah,
Yeah.
It was fucking Festivus for Red Cow Arcade.
Oh, but you guys have no idea. You know the episode of Seinfeld where Jerry's girlfriend expresses that she doesn't like George, and George is like, I can't not be liked. I have to explain to this woman why she should like me. And they're like, George, not everybody's going to like you. That's my father. My father, people love my father, and people tell him that he's great. And when I see my father, he tells me that people have been telling him that he's great. And at some point down the line, after all the people that have told my dad he was great, there was actually one time where somebody had said that he was not great. And I think my father tracked this man down to explain to him that he's great. But the intense way that I talk, I pray every day on trying to like undownload.
Do your brothers share that same thing, or is it just you?
The youngest.
Yeah.
The middle child's cool. The middle child's like, chill. My youngest brother, I think, has it the most. So if I'm ever in the same place with my dad and my youngest brother at the same time, I'm like, I've got to get the fuck out of here. Just the rhythm that everybody speaks at is like, it just breeds tension in the room.
Well, I do have to say, when I saw the follow-up video, a lot clicked into place. Because I do think I went to high school with you, not you, but lowercase you. I don't know. Yeah, it brought me back to a simpler time where I would have a strange conflict with somebody, and then very quickly it was like, "You want to be friends?" You're like, "Yeah, okay."
Well, I'm really not into debating. I do believe, even though it's not a intellectual concept to say this, I think there's a lot of low-key hatred in debating. I think the notion of wanting to challenge somebody in that way means you want to at least verbally or through the conception of your argument destroy them. And if you could leave them speechless because they have no retort to your breakdown in the debate, I almost think that's like the nerdy verbal version of punching somebody out. And so I have no fantasy of wanting to torch somebody with my words, and it's like, oh, it was a takedown, he couldn't respond. Generally, when I'm speaking to people, even people that I disagree with, if they're friendly enough that we seem to be on the same page and they're saying something I totally disagree with, I have trouble being like, well, how do you figure that? And do you have something to support your argument? Because I just think that that's the uncoolest thing to do. And it actually just leads me to two questions I have for you guys.
Okay.
So if you were to meet James Rolfe, you could actually see yourself saying to him in person, like you say about him in the videos
Absolutely
on the internet.
I never would in a million years.
Because it feels uncool, right? Could you imagine? But let me say this. Let me say it like this. Could you imagine saying to him, like, big fan, love what you do, but, as we've described, you just got to do better.
I wouldn't.
Because anybody on the receiving end of that would be like, who the fuck is this? What do you mean I got to do better?
People have been like, wouldn't it be great to interview James? Then you could finally ask him about the lights or whatever. I'm like, I have zero. I would like to talk to Mike Matei, actually. I think that would be really fun. I think we would have a really interesting conversation on the podcast. But in James's case, I would really strongly prefer that he not know who Red Cow Arcade are. I wish he didn't know I want to feel free to have this conversation in a neutral, unemotional, in a way that hurts nobody's feelings, but I still want to feel free to have the conversation about a celebrity, Kevin, a celebrity. He has always ever been to me a sample case, an abstraction, an example of YouTube 20 years in the making. Because you have to realize the Reddit, which was something we were just kind of like peeping at the time, because we were like, what's going on over there? Specifically, it was when he was like, by the way, Mike Matei will not be with the channel anymore. Good luck, Mike. We were like, wait, what the fuck just happened?
Mike and I talked about it, and he'll be leaving the channel to focus full-time on his streaming. Wish him the best of luck on that.
What we learned was that Reddit was born out of hating Mike, and Mike being brash, and Mike showing his, not his actual dick, but posting a dick picture on a lot of people still think that Mike showed his own 10-inch penis on Reddit, but he did not. So anyway, it was, and they hate the slobs. I found out they don't like the slobs. Nobody likes the slobs. mobs.
Yeah, the Reddit was born out of their comment. Like they were just like, "What's going on?" And those comments would be getting deleted. So on the official channels and the Cinemassacre subreddit, so they created like a subreddit so they could actually talk about the weirdness going on.
There was a long time there where they were like, but James is a golden child. James did nothing wrong. James, unfortunately, and poor James, like he has to deal with Mike, who's making these horrible business mistakes, and James is just looking for somebody to help him.
Poor James is right on all fronts. I'm just gonna say that they're fucking with my man all the time.
James is in charge of a company, Kevin, is he not?
Yeah, but they're fucking with him. They're always fucking with him on the internet everywhere I look.
But they weren't. He was untouchable. He was the Mr. Rogers of YouTube. It's what we were told.
So that brings me around to my second question. So we've kind of proven my point on one front. You would never say the things that you'd say about James online to him in person because that would be
but I don't think that proves anything.
That doesn't really prove anything. Like I could, let's say Quentin Tarantino comes out with the 10th film and it's fucking awful. And then I meet Quentin Tarantino. I'm not the first thing I'm gonna say to him is not like, "Oh, that was an awful film you just released." Like I'm gonna be like, "Oh, hey, Quentin Tarantino."
And I should feel free to chat about it on a podcast.
Okay, well, here's my second question. So I was very intrigued to find out that you have some sort of personal relationship with Justin from Screenwave, and you speak to him.
A little bit.
So now, how in the hell do you navigate that? Similarly, after talking about him the way you've talked about him, how do you speak to him? Like, yeah, dude, the company's pretty much fucked and you need to do better, but like it's good to hear from you. How in the hell does that work?
Well, I'll tell you. There's a few, for one thing, and I know you haven't watched much of the Cinemassacre content because you can't stomach it.
Is he just oddly, is he absurdly open to criticism with how much bullshit he gets on the internet?
Well, I think, yeah, let's unpack all of it, shall we? As Dan Olson would do. Let's unpack it.
Let's get the projector out.
Starting with, you haven't seen much of our commentary, but you were like, how can he talk to you when you've been ripping them to shreds? Like, I haven't been ripping. I ripped you to shreds. I apologize. But I didn't.
Because I'm worth ripping to shreds.
But we don't rip them to shreds.
Because they're not worth it.
It's a bit of mischief. It's a bit of tee-hee. It's a bit of, hey, we really are fans of these guys and we can't look away.
Yeah, we're massholes.
That's the biggest point I've proven. I'm actually outrageous. I'm stuck like this. These guys are just like quiet nerds that sometimes fumble content. So it was much funnier to make fun of me than them. But yeah.
Well, you should see the one where we're talking about Kieran because EJ goes up to bat for him. EJ is like, this guy is a good editor. I really, and he was very mistreated by Screenwave. And so we didn't ourselves say, yes, it's factual. He was mistreated by Screenwave. We talked about the fact that Kieran talked about how he was mistreated by Screenwave. So to the extent that we've ever crossed a line, that we've made these guys out to be horrific people or something, I repent for that. I don't want to do that, and I apologize for it. There have been times where like we've snuck in a funny joke because it was right there, and you can't just let it sit. I don't know when. I think like 2017 is when they kind of got brought into the fold. Pardon the pun. And look, the thing with the lights on the ceiling and all that, like it's just a little too funny. The thing with no time, it's just a little too funny. It is ribbing. I swear to you, it's ribbing. Okay, so Justin, we only started talking with any kind of regularity, and by that I mean we've probably had 6 or 7 discreet DM conversations in our lifetime where he like would reach out and be like, hey, we're doing something on Friday, or we might see him at PAX East. We will be at PAX East with Jason Graves and with EJ, hopefully, if EJ's baby, depending on the timing.
If he has time?
The baby could be born anytime, yeah.
EJ always makes time, though, doesn't he? He figures out a way.
Got me there.
Yeah, like Noah's being born, we still did stuff.
So actually, you know what? I DM'd him years ago about something, and he didn't get back to me. So maybe there was some resentment there. I also with the Reddit, he did an AMA, which was like kind of like it was like a blood fest where he was like, just ask me anything, and they were all going at him, but he was trying to handle. This was before the plagiarism thing. He was trying to handle the PR very, very fragilely and very, very delicately, and it was a very interesting read. Did the AVGN movie break James? I'm not so sure that it broke him. It would do some kind of like delicate response, and then I don't know. Maybe it was like half a year ago that like he reached out once or twice, and it's kind of like you and me. I've said since the beginning, I was like, you know what? I think that Justin is just as much of a Cinemassacre truther as anybody else. I think that dude, he's up close and personal with it. He couldn't schedule half the shoots.
But even though he's like to blame for fucking 80% of it.
Imagine if you were James Rolfe's producer and you needed to schedule time to shoot the new AVGN and you needed to get it all edited. I see you twitching, by the way. So imagine if you had to get it done. I bet you'd be a little bit frustrated. I bet you would tell James, don't fuck with your time.
The number one thing I stress to the entire crew when we're working is do not fuck with our time and respect our time, because my DP has not slept in 3 days and my co-director and his wife, who's also a producer, left 2 small children at home that they're sacrificing spending time with to be here. So when you speak to him, is it...
It's just like friendly and passive. He was telling us about some new content that's coming up and he was like, yeah, we're trying to focus around like nostalgia and memories and stuff. And, you know, or there's been once or twice where I've been like, you know, hopefully it won't be like this again. And he's like, oh yeah, well, you know, I really regretted that we did that or whatever. Like, I don't know. He's a troll, Justin.
Yeah.
Granted, he's also a PR guy and he also represents a company. So he can't, you know, I've been like, you ever want to come on? And he's been like, no.
Yeah.
You know, doesn't want to appear on camera. But he's like, I'm willing to answer questions if I can answer questions for you. I linked him to our video about you and he was like, ugh, an hour. He was like, you know, listen for an hour. Or somebody else linked him and he was like, that guy called me fat.
Oh, he watched it? Yikes. What do you want me to say? Business is business. Sometimes people make the wrong business decisions. I have zero interest in all the dirt. Oh, it turns out the fat guy, Justin, was like really the one fucking it all up. I don't care. I don't care. Because I'm not fucking lame. Because I have a sex life. Well, the one thing's for sure. The only one that's got the true answers on who is actually at fault for like any suffering Cinemassacre content is Kieran. That's the only one who knows. And now when he did all his stuff on the internet, I mean, I watched his live stream for as much as I could.
Were you mad at him for stabbing everybody in the back? For being a garbage stabber?
I love my life as a troll. I just love it. And then he's like, whoa, that guy looks scary. And then a scary guy walks up and stabs the fucking garbage out of his life. Or, you know, if that doesn't work, it's like, whatever. And then he's walking down the street, and then someone comes up and just shoots him in the face.
I don't know if you saw his like big stream about how much Screenwave.
I did. His girlfriend doesn't shut the fuck up in the background, so I'm trying to focus on what he's saying, and all I got from it was they were real tough on him. Yeah.
He went back on a stream. There was some sort of belching girlfriend behind him, and.
Because that's why I got mad.
Yeah, Kieran, you go, boy.
They were real unfair to him, but I don't know if he withheld comments about James because James is the bigger internet star.
He did. Yeah, he didn't shit talk James. But he shat talked Justin and Ryan really hard.
Well, right. And so the thing is I don't know if he withheld comments about James because he didn't want to criticize the bigger internet star that he maybe felt he had the privilege of working for or something like that.
He called him awkward. He said we were 3 awkward. He was talking about the podcast. He goes, we were 3 really awkward guys.
So I don't know. The way it looks is that like James is just doing his best. He hired the wrong people. And
James is asleep.
They took it down the road. They took it down. What do you mean he's asleep? Everybody sleeps. We did not sleep. Nobody slept.
Sometimes 3 hours.
Is there no part of you as a longtime fan who wants what's best for him that thinks, well, geez, you are the captain of the ship. Why have there been times where you weren't leading the ship at all? Like,
my completely sincere opinion here. I just don't think it's comparable to like a multi-million-dollar entity. Like you assumed at one point your ballpark figure. You think maybe James makes like $1 million a year or something like that.
I think Cinemassacre brings in 1.5. That's my theory.
Well, I mean that's an interesting theory. I don't know. I can't even guess what content.
It's based on a few data points.
Okay. Well, see, I don't know much about the internet and what internet personalities really make. All I know is even that is nowhere near as comparable to like the multi-million-dollar operation that is The Simpsons or Family Guy or any show that's been running for 20 years. So I do see it as being maybe somewhat of an understandably impossible task, mainly because it's not his only gig. So if he did get rid of all the other Cinemassacre content besides AVGN, maybe he could still run that ship himself.
He did. And I think now, like I said, in the past year or so, he's producing his own like I think he's doing one for them, one for me. I think he's outsourcing the production of AVGN, and he's doing like the Dracula, Frankenstein stuff and the film noir stuff. So I think he's like, I think his kids are getting older, and he's
waking up a little. He's getting more energized by his projects more.
I look at it like this: anytime an AVGN episode is good, I'm like he was more hands on in this.
Yeah, maybe. I don't remember the last time James said something that I thought was funny or said it in a funny way. I do think he's lost. My dad once told me, Kevin, that when you get a little older, you lose your balls. And I think a little bit of balls have been lost here. Understandable. It happens to all of us. But as I was saying in DMs with you, in order to stay hungry, you got to keep eating. And I think he stopped eating for a little while. And I think the reason I like to talk about it on a public platform is not because I care specifically about him, or I'm like super disappointed with him, a celebrity I've never met before, but because I think it's an interesting conversation in the abstract to talk about to what extent should you lose yourself when you have a family and children? But
I still think it's not comparable to the long running success of people that we see in Hollywood.
But what's that got to? I'm not following what that's got to do with anything.
Because I think it seems like too much to juggle something like you're going to have a show that ran as long as The Simpsons, and it's going.
But I don't care if it's good or not. This is a straw man in a straw hat.
No, first of all, I don't know what straw man means, and second of all, this is my sincere opinion.
It's not a phone or anything technical.
No, that sounds like something from debate culture. Anytime somebody makes a point, someone says like it was a straw man. I don't know what that means. He was the straw man.
Well, no, I mean it's just logic.
Well, no, but I'm just telling you this is not CNN for me. That's
it's fine. It's not CNN for me either. A straw man is a real concept. It's when you characterize the other argument as a foolish one, even though that's not what the person said.
It's like building a straw man yourself, and then you attack that straw man.
The fact that, okay, you take a Hollywood celebrity, right? When they'll reach 60 years old, and the public will be like, look at him, he fell off. It'll be like, he's fucking 60. Now, if they get back on the horse and they start making hits again, then the public and Hollywood as a whole, they welcome them back into the fold.
The public is cruel. Yep.
So you take like Stallone never burnt out. And like he's burnt out for a small period of time, then he came back. But when he comes back and he has an idea that's still viable, it's fucking Expendables 3 would instead of your regular unit and then your second unit, there's 7 units working at once, and the thing cost $100 million. As opposed to like James being as close to a single entity as you can be, not making nearly as much money, doing the same thing for 20 years, I think it's a little bit more understandable to get burnt out because his next decent AVGN idea is not going to have $100 million budget. It's just going to have like him, fucking Justin, and whatever the fuck, and let's try to do the same thing we did in 2004, just as good 20 years later.
You're saying that the likelihood that he's like Sly can be remotivated by the reward of a commercial film and the resources that come with it, and James, like if he is able to find his fire again, a standard issue AVGN probably isn't going to bring that out of him.
Or just having millions upon millions to make it. And that's the whole reason why I struggle to judge people's indie movies. I mean, if it's a micro budget or even just a little bit more than a micro budget, I find it so difficult. Like if I still haven't watched your movie, but I'm going to watch it. And if I watch it and there's anything that rubs me the wrong way that could have easily been solved by $100,000, it's so tough for me to be like, to know what that budget was and to think like, yeah, but you still should have like really thought within the terms of the budget and figured it out when it's just so insane to
but
make
you
a
think
movie
that's
on
where
low.
I'm coming from? Everything you're saying, I feel like it's not in response to anything I've ever said, felt, or thought.
I'm talking about the whole general concept of judging one guy's productivity with the budget that he's got and like the few people he's got helping.
But our whole thing was, why don't you just stop? Like, if you don't like doing it, like just slow it way down, only do projects that you want to do. Oh, he also said, look, if I had to do it all by myself, then you'd only get like 3 videos a year. Well, that's kind of what people are asking for. They're like, slow it down, make it on your own schedule, do what you want to do.
Oh, that's the other thing. The other thing is I think there's a disconnect between like him and say like a Hollywood filmmaker is you could do 5 movies as a big time filmmaker. You made your money. You'll never run out of money as long as you don't put it up your nose and you can retire. That's the other thing that's strange about his predicament is it's his day job. Yeah. And it's not like he could have, he had, I don't think the guy had $100 million after the 5th season of AVGN and he could just call it a day. That's just my opinion. I know it sounds like I'm debating, but I'm really just telling you what I think.
Yeah, look, I'm not a debate bro, believe it or not. I don't think I've ever had a debate on this podcast before.
No, but I think you get me. I understand that I'm like an outrageous character, but the way you respond,
we're aligned on. That was my whole point in saying you got the wrong guy. Is like a lot of the core of the points that you've made. I'm aligned with.
I'm only about half speaking to things that you guys have said specifically, and then half speaking.
That's what I want to do.
Right, and then half speaking to this odd community at large that just shit talks the man. And now we're talking real shit talk, because we're going everything from the intellectual critique that's not hateful because it's intellectual, all the way down to making fun of the dude for
God damn it.
all the way down to making fun of the dude for his fucking hairline. If he breathes wrong, he's done something wrong, and they continuously return to these Reddits to talk bad about him. That's a little bit more hateful. Me and my gaming nerd friends have talked about this, and they were like, yeah, they said they agree with me, because there seems to be a notion on the internet that not only did the dude just get burnt out and fall off a bit creatively, it was an injustice to the fans that he burnt out and fell off. Now, please hear me on this, because this is the key difference, I think. If you have a multi-million-dollar budget for your 20-year television show, and you do a disservice to the fans, I understand the fans being upset, because they're like, you got everything you need on the fucking planet. If one guy who makes $1 million a year with his 6 buddies from fucking Screenwave who might plagiarize something, fuck it all up, I just don't think that that's comparable. Like, in my mind, there is no reason for Scream 7 to suck. Scream 7 just came out and everyone says it sucks. It had how many millions of dollars? There is absolutely somebody out there in the world that lives and breathes the mythology of Scream that could have done that sequel justice, but they hand it to somebody who, he's a writer he's got previous credits in other big movies and he sucks.
What about the AVGN movie? $350,000 or whatever it was, many, many years of waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike Matei is not even the co-star. The way I feel about that movie is I actually think the premise is a pretty good one. I think the mythos behind that E.T. game, that's a great premise for an AVGN movie. I think that some of the novelty, like the kaiju and the puppets and all that stuff, that's all great. But the lack of characters is a real problem. I actually saw it in theaters. Like, I went out to, I don't even remember where we went, but I brought my wife.
Yeah, where did you go to see? Did it play in mass?
It was like some weird theater. And I remember I brought my wife because she's cool like that. And she was just like, this theater is so smelly.
It's full of nerds.
The childless, sexless nerds, they came out in droves that night.
They came out for James.
And they were asleep, like James himself, about 45 minutes into it. Because obviously it has all these rhythm problems. But I think with because I hear what you're saying about, like, you don't really get to be all that upset about something that is low stakes. Maybe that's a better way to put it, is like, hey, this is a web series with low resources. Like, the whole thing is, is crapping on a video game. Like, the whole thing's pretty low stakes. No reason to get too riled up. But I think maybe the movie, though, because that was a big fan project. It was crowd funded and all the rest of it. Now he did finish it, and he brought it to the big theater. See, this is where we break, okay? Is I watched the production of that movie, and I'm like, why the fuck did he shoot it in Los Angeles? Why the fuck didn't he put, like, I can't help but be critical.
Both Frankie and I are problem solvers, like, by nature. We see something like, oh, that's fucked up. How would we fix it? How would we do this? It's just, and we talk about it because that's our relationship, and what we thought was interesting. It's like, oh, look at, like, the community's bringing up this problem and this problem, and we came with it with our filmmaking background, and I think that's why it kind of popped off, is because people understood something was wrong, and they could. It's like when you probably aren't a fan of Mr. Plinkett, but because he trashes the prequels. But a lot of people had problems with the prequels, but beyond, like, oh, I know Jar Jar sucked, but then there was, like, awkward dialogue. They couldn't quite put their finger on what to say. But when Plinkett came out and was like describing what a protagonist was, protagonist, and put it in terms like, oh yeah, that those are, like, that kind of connects with what I was feeling. And I think when our behind the scenes commentary came out, people were like, oh yeah, that's what I was feeling. Of course, there was also people who love James. They're like, why are you talking to James?
I've never heard of you fuckers.
What have you done? What have you? But we thought it was, like, a fun thing to think about. Be like, oh wait, these are the things that he gets hung up on. Here's the inefficiencies.
And I hope he never hears it, because he doesn't need to. I don't need to stress him out about it. I just want to have a private, public conversation about it.
My opinion is just, that thing was doomed from the jump because of the concept of a character from a web series that reviews video games is supposed to carry an entire feature-length story.
Yeah, you need somebody besides the nerd character, probably.
I just don't think the nerd character had any business carrying a feature. So I think he did the best he could with the foundation they had for that movie. He's not a film character.
You're right. That's true. But that's not actually, in my opinion, that's not actually the problem with the movie. The problem with the movie is that it's like structurally incoherent. As an example, wouldn't it make more sense? Shouldn't this guy be like a loser? Like he's like an alcoholic playing NES games. So like, shouldn't some of the comedy come from there? And then they have him working at GameStop, but he's also a celebrity that's like changed people's lives. But then the fact that he's changed people's lives never really factors into the narrative. So it's like all jump. It's a first draft.
Wow. That just blew my mind. You're 100% right. He played himself as James Rolfe more than he played the nerd. You're 100% right. Holy fuck.
Guy, yeah.
The guy who's famous for being the nerd, but in like the reality of the show, he's a loser in the basement who drinks and plays video games and complains about it.
Yeah,
like, I don't
right.
think there shouldn't have been this celebrity aspect to the character.
So I did a recut of it, and one of the easiest cuts is that GameStop thing. That comes right out. And that's like the movie is like way better off without
it.
Does
it plays without it? Because there's not some exposition in that scene?
He explains the E.T. landfill thing in 3.5 different scenes in the first 20 minutes.
No,
there's the opening like Atari documentary thing that explains it, and then there's like the boardroom with like Mindy or whatever her name is, and then there's like a car ride with Cooper to the job where they talk about it, and then fans come in and say you need to review E.T. and they chant E.T. at the GameStop. Then he gets yelled at by a boss for no reason. And then they drive home, him and Cooper, in the car, in the green screen car, and he says it again. You know, if you're just editing it, you can see, like, oh yeah, we already repeated that information once or twice. It improves the movie a lot because you also kind of get to, like, the adventure part, the road trip part, a lot, like, at the 20-minute mark instead of, like, the 35-minute mark. It's a 2-hour movie. I cut it down to 1:10, and I think I didn't really lose. Like, I kept, like, the zombie stuff and a lot of things that give it flavor. I have a theory that low-budget films in general, whether it's $350,000 or micro-budget or whatever, even if you're charmed by them and even if they're working, the audience is going to, you're going to wear out the audience's welcome, like, after a little, like, you do have to keep those runtimes, I think, tight.
Yeah, you know the inception of the 90-minute runtime?
No.
Is because we dream in 90-minute sequences, scientists
say. Is that right?
Scientists say that we dream in 90-minute sequences. And if you ever have dreams that feel like movies, like I was here, but then the next thing you knew it was a different scene, and now I was dreaming about something else. Usually your dreams, especially if they're really wild dreams, are like almost like 4 or 5 different scenes. They're almost cut like movies. Every one of those instances in a dream is apparently a 90-minute sequence. So once you've exceeded 90 minutes, you've taken the ability to zone into a television and have it jerk your emotions like you're in the television. You've kind of tuned people out of that, I suppose, unless you're a Marvel junkie or something, but I've never been able to relate to that. After like 3 Avenger movies, I was like, I don't give a fuck about Iron Man or what he's doing or nothing.
Yeah,
I just
me neither. We watch them all, but me neither.
You're just too overwhelmed by it. I can't get into it at all, and I can't do the new Spider-Mans because they're too this generation. Everybody's a sarcastic prick. Like, everything's funny and everyone's a sarcastic prick, and high school kids are so less phased by, like, the Green Goblin than they are regular high school shit because they're so cool. And that's like...
Okay, they're cool.
That's like my little brother's generation. I'm like, this is fucking horrible. There was real stakes in the other ones because people care.
Yeah, is there a Spider-Man movie that you love?
Tobey Maguire. Yeah, those.
All 3 of them,
or
maybe the first 2.
Yeah, no, even the third one I thought was. People say that one's like a mess, but entertainment.
It's the most memeable one, for sure.
Threequel wise, you know, it's at least it was entertaining as fuck. You know, it brought a lot of elements together. It did Venom pretty fucked up.
Yeah, you could tell he was like he didn't want to do Venom.
Venom was
he wanted to do the Sandman story, and the studio was like, put Venom in there. And he did.
Venom in that movie is almost like my theory about how the nerds became the bullies and shit in modern society, because they put a nerd in that role when he was supposed to be like a muscled douchebag.
Yeah. Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
Who you kind of look like, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
You've heard this before. Did you see that we made you like Bane in our villains, like Rogue Gallery?
Yeah, now I want to know who the other people are. I want to know who so there's a couple female haters in there. I'd like to know what their story is. Maybe I could get one of them on a date.
You know Lindsay Ellis, the nostalgia chick.
I don't know any of them.
I'm not gonna name any names here.
So you never followed Doug Walker, Channel Awesome, none of those guys?
Channel Awesome rings a bell, but I don't know if I've delved
Well,
into
Nostalgia Critic was the other AVGN, right? Like there was James and AVGN, and then there was this guy that came along. He was like, I'm the same thing, but I do movie reviews right around the same time. And he had a collab with James. They did a funny like bit together where they were like fighting and
Yeah, I think I saw that actually. I remember seeing that.
And then Doug went on to, he had channelawesome.com, or originally thatguywiththeglasses.com. And he had this was kind of pre-YouTube monetization. He had these aspirations for like, well, maybe our website could actually be a network for content creators who do kind of what we do, which is this like angry review, movie review, shoot it in your bedroom with a webcam. I saw your video about like, hey, I really miss the gaming channels that were just made by people, kids, teenagers. When it wasn't so glossy, it wasn't all dressed up.
Not many media entities.
Yeah. Well, this was that. I mean, this was like as amateur as it gets, and a lot. It was very clear. Most of them were on the spectrum and stuff, but it was kind of. I think a lot of the audience was too, and so there was camaraderie around that maybe. And then they started doing these anniversary specials where they would bring all the collaborators together because they were shooting all across the country. And they would do it like they made like a movie together called like Kick-Assia. And so anyway, we reviewed those in depth on this channel, and it's some of our most fun content for sure. But so Nostalgia Critic said, I would like to have Nostalgia Chick. I'd like to have a female counterpart to what I'm doing here. She's like Dan Olson. She is like besties with Dan Olson, or they're very close or something.
Ugh.
Like, she's of that ilk.
Ew.
The film school.
This is what turns her on? Oh my goodness.
I don't know that it turns her on, but she'll keep it around. She's married now with children, and she makes like very heady, thinky, political type content now.
Oh no!
But she was the nostalgia chick at one time, where she would just review Mean Girls and the My Little Pony movie and stuff like that. And she and a lot of the others got together and wrote this thing called the Not So Awesome document. So they made a Google Doc canceling Doug for like 5% of it, like super serious allegations about some of the other people that were in the channel, and 95% of it, which is like, I didn't like how he managed the website, and I didn't like how he didn't, like when we shot that anniversary movie, he didn't provide enough food, and like it's like the most petty shit.
Oh my God.
You would get a kick out of it.
Yeah, you got to link me or something. And also, like, autism always comes up when you're talking about the internet video game community. And a lot of these autism people are very angry, I noticed, too. I think there's almost like there is almost a symptom of being on the spectrum that's like an inability to express your anger properly. I know because I dated a girl who is, she says she's autistic, though she doesn't seem like it. But she's like a hot wrestler. Like, that's almost like how the chick is built. Like, she's built very nice, but she's also, like, she's tough. And she says whenever she's not with me, she beats the shit out of people all the time. And I'm like, that might be the autism. She's never put her hands on me, but she's always...
Have you ever wrestled with this gal?
No, and sometimes it makes me scared to see her. I'm like, what do you mean you put somebody's head through a fucking door at a bar? What are you talking about? I'm like, that might be the autism.
I mean, in all seriousness, if you... Let's say that you were like normal you... but you were finding that most of your social interactions fail. Something goes wrong with them.
Yeah.
You're misunderstood, or you end up not saying the thing that, and so you're in like kind of a constant state of like social frustration. That's not minor, because that will fuck up a job, and that'll fuck up a relationship and a friendship, and it kind of haunts you. So I imagine, like, if to the extent that we see any kind of pattern with like frustration in the autism community, it's like it's probably because it's frustrating to be autistic, to some degree.
And I think it's hard for them to convey their feelings with just text too. So if you're like fighting with an autistic person online, it's frustrating for them and for you, because you're just like, oh, you sound so angry, but they're actually just being blunt because that's the way they are.
Yeah, but I try not to go down this rabbit hole, because I don't want to convince that I don't want to like start thinking that I'm autistic, because all the characteristics that make up somebody who can be on the spectrum seem to be there's so many different things. I don't know that's a new thing of the past 10 years I've noticed, is that so many people think they're autistic because maybe they have issues controlling their anger or
ADHD or anxiety or whatever. I think anything that's a behavioral disorder, where, in other words, where you diagnose it by observing behavior or doing like a long, a multi-hour survey about behavioral stuff. I mean, that's not going to have the same kind of diagnostic accuracy that like scanning for cancer is going to, or scanning for something that's physical or biological. So there's like latitude to be like, I think I'm undiagnosed autistic, or I'm, there's like a lot more of that to go around.
Yeah, I just keep it down to the lack of eye contact, and inability to read obvious social cues. And if you can do that, I'm not concerned with the level of your autism.
There's somebody I used to work with. She would come up to you and she would tell you everything. You know that thing you do where you're like, all right, well, okay, good. Yeah, all right, well, thanks. And you're trying to like wind down the conversation. She goes, yeah. And then she ramps it all the way back up again. Yeah. And what I learned was, I was like, all right, Ann, I have to work now, so I can't talk anymore. And then she'd go, oh, okay, sounds great. And she'd leave. But like, that's a lot, that does take a lot to be like, hey, I need to work now and I can't talk anymore.
For sure. I suppose I do kind of encourage folks not to take every example of something like that all the way up to the level that you assume somebody is autistic, because there is such a thing as being a person with a complete lack of social awareness that's fully equipped and not autistic. They just really don't give a fuck about the attention span that somebody has for what they're saying.
Yeah. Well, I've met a lot of people too with these behavioral disorders where they got diagnosed with bipolar or something. They went to see a psych specialist and they got diagnosed with bipolar, and they're like, yeah, it's great. I got diagnosed with bipolar. I'm like, what do you mean it's great? That sucks. And they were like, no, it's great because I had these problems and now it's explained. And I'm like, I don't know that would actually make me feel better. I think I'd be like,
no.
Fuck.
We're in agreement with the way that the modern world tries to turn everything into a medical diagnosis. And for many of those things, you'll never have any way of scientifically proving to yourself that it was real or unreal. That's everything from ADD to restless leg syndrome or...
That's right. Like, if you thought you were autistic, would you seek a diagnosis at this point in your life? Wouldn't you just be like, whatever?
It would have to be hindering and obvious enough, at least.
Yeah, and that's what a psych person would say. They'd say, like, you should be here seeking a diagnosis because there's some problem that you want to get solved.
Well, I think we talk more about those things in our society than talking about the development of a child and whether or not they're coming up in a home where they're being installed with an ability to be able to handle the world or not. You may absorb your mother's anxiety or your dad's fucking real life George Costanza isms, and you're kind of just molded that way. And then Sly says children are like soft clay, and once you mold them, they're kind of stuck that way. And you can sort of try to improve those qualities, but it's your default setting.
Basically, when we're born, we're soft clay, and a heavy-handed sculptor starts to put dents in it, and that's in our mold. That's what we are, and you just can't correct those distortions.
I think a lot of that is just subconsciously absorbed with the way that you grow up. And when I talk to people that didn't come up in a really obscene household, I can almost not grasp what it's like to be somebody like that. That's just mellow, and sometimes they seem a little bit more boring. And a very unfortunate truth is if you come up in absolute chaos, or you had parents that beat you or did drugs or did wild shit, it tends to make you like that's where a lot of great storytellers and comedians and actors come from, because whether conscious of it or not, they're venting that.
Well, anxiety is what? It's fear of the unknown. It's not knowing what's around the corner. And I think like that's, if you at a young age, if you don't learn trust, then you may be carrying a kind of baseline anxiety with you everywhere you go. You're like, well, I don't really know what's around the corner. So I learned to be worried about what's around the corner, right? And that's something you have to actually like unlearn. That's really, really hard, because supposedly we learn like we grow our trust gland or whatever. We learn trust when we're babies. Like when I scream, somebody comes and gets me and feeds me, because if I scream and nobody feeds me, well, that kind of starts to reshape me. Or they say that, like, I forget, like, people from broken households. I've seen families where there's just a lot of kids. There's 3 or 4 kids or something. And in order to be heard, or in order to get your parent to give you some attention, you kind of have to yell. You have to be louder than everybody else. Or you have to, like, not give up on trying to get your parents' attention. You got to ask 10 times, and not be worried. And like that creates a different kind of child too, as opposed to a child who's like, no, I calmly ask for somebody's attention and I get it. And you take all this stuff into adulthood with you.
Yeah, 100%. I'm surprised that you can even wrap your head around that if you didn't come from it, because when you come from it, it may make sense on paper, but it is wild. It takes a long time for you to understand it yourself. Essentially, the notion that, being loud and being aggressive is the best way to get your point across might also be the best way to defeat somebody. And maybe internally, that's a subconscious reason that I don't agree with something that seems simple, but as simple as like abusing each other in YouTube comments and things of this nature, because it still says to me, you're trying to prove your point or be heard or be seen in a way that kills everybody's attention and actually turns it away from you. Because as soon as you get insulting, that person is tuned out. In my adulthood now, I have no fantasy of verbally shutting somebody down, because as soon as you get aggressive, you've lost that person. I think cinema made us believe in two things. One, that everybody finds the kind of romance that's in the movies. Not everybody finds that. And then two, that if you just give a show-stopping, scene-halting speech to someone you've always wanted to get through to, it will turn everything around. In the movies, that's usually a pivotal turning point in the film. In real life, I've failed 10 out of 10 times, whether it was with a family member, with my father, with a woman, you name it. Like, all right, I've been holding this back, and now I'm going to let it all loose, and my passion will move you and naturally change the dynamic of what's going on here. And then the person's just like, okay, are you done?
You don't win in a conflict. Like you work together in a conflict. Like, so if we're sparring on the internet, the point is it's just a blood sport for no good reason. It's fruitless, right?
Yeah.
But if we're actually trying to find truth, like we're trying to then like you said you don't like debates. A good debate would be where two people are kind of like collaborators. Well, I've got some information and you've got some information, and we're going to try to like fit those pieces of information.
Yeah, I would rather actually genuinely attempt to see if you can see where I'm coming from, but if I offend you first, you'll never see where I'm coming from.
Right, of course.
And now I don't even listen to the conversation points in the debate. I just kind of look at the mentality of the person speaking.
Let's talk about rerouting.
Oof.
We both watched this movie. EJ saw it too.
No refund.
It's 90 minutes. You can see it on Tubi, Amazon, and like I said earlier, it's starring Kevin and his brothers and a number of attractive young women. It's about a killer Uber driver, and Kevin plays kind of like the good guy Uber driver who's like caught up in the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it on Tubi, and I don't normally watch things on Tubi. So there was plenty of car insurance and Zit Cream ads while I was watching this. So I have a few questions. So what did you shoot this movie on? Like what was the camera technology? Do you know?
Sony FX3 with just really badass Zeiss cinema lenses. My DP, who's also my cam op, had not moved into learning about and understanding red cams, nor do I think we had the budget to rent one because nobody owned one. And I thought, this guy is just so good around a Sony. I can't imagine myself working with anybody else, and anytime I attempt to, I get unbelievably frustrated. So I'm like, let's just get the baddest, the coolest lenses that we can get. Let's get a good cinema lens package and throw it on the and just throw it on the FX3.
Yeah, and it's shot real wide too.
Like people were like, "Oh, you're gonna like review his movie and roast it?" And I like watched the movie. I'm like, this is very competent. This is
Thank you.
Great sound, great visuals. Like, I mean,
thank you. The guy that sound designs the Terrifier movies sound designed that, so he is as on point as it gets.
Yeah, so tell us about Inception, how you achieved funding for it. And I know it was shot in 8 days. So kind of, can you like just paint that whole picture?
After my first feature, we got a funding opportunity where these guys we worked with through the podcast circuit were like, we're open to funding something. And once that notion was on the table, it was almost kind of like Sly with Rocky. Like maybe we'll produce something if you got something. And we were like, oh fuck, let's see if we got something. And at the time, Terrifier was just blowing up. And I didn't want to try to copy Terrifier, and horror really isn't even my genre. Like, I like the classic monster movies, but those remind me of like the Mac Miller record, watching TV with the sound off. It's all for the atmosphere. It's not so you can get super engaged in it. So I knew I wanted to do something horror because it just seemed like the only micro-budget movies that stood a chance. You know, nobody wants to see... I have a fantastic drama about what it's like to grow up around a crack and a hose, and like, it's like a really, like, gut-wrenching family drama. You know, I grew up around crack and heroin and hoes turning tricks. But I know nobody wants to see that made for anything under like $2 million, and you got to have a good name in the movie.
It wouldn't slot in on one of these platforms that does host lower budget movies.
Yeah, right, exactly. But also you can't sell it as well and nobody's interested in it.
Right.
So just like I don't understand anything about like thrash metal and the fact that you could be this like tiny indie thrash metal band, but you also have a huge audience because that just seems to be like an audience that doesn't mind smaller bands. That's the way it looked to me with these micro budget horror movies. I'm like, if this thing could be made for $30,000 and there's still just an audience that's like, I don't care how much money went into it. I want to see blood and guts and tits. So I'm like, let me see if I can just vent everything I'm feeling in my life right now about myself and my family and my living situation so that it's sincere. And the one thing I think I can do better than most micro-budget horror movies is make you care about the people. So we spend 20 minutes getting to know the people so you connect with them so that when they're thrown into chaos, you actually give a shit. Instead of just lining up the thought, the jock, the stoner, the guy that really likes video games. They're all the most generic people in the world. They talk about shit you can't relate to. It sounds scripted and contrived, and then you kill all of them off in creative ways. So I was like, let me just write a movie about my life and about my family and kind of base it all on us. Then let's find a horror aspect to wrap it in. And then I brought it to Dan Samini, who also additionally wrapped it in a conspiracy element. And we were like, let's see if we can make something real.
Dan is your longtime collaborator. Like, what's the story with Dan?
Yeah, we were neighbors as kids, and we always said that we were going to grow up and make movies. Same with the killer from the movie, Scott Haygood. He was like a part of our crew when we were young, and we all said we were going to grow up and make movies. So I was like, clock's ticking. We hadn't done it yet. Let's, basically, let's do it. And then I brought in my brothers, all our friends and family. And we went for it.
Did you say $50,000?
Yeah, $50,000 for 8 days. We might have done 2 pickup days after the 8 days with, I think, 2 people behind the camera. So 8 days with the whole crew, 2 days with almost nobody behind the camera. I just knew I needed everything to be right. I was like, I can't half-ass this.
It's a lot of setups for 8 days. Yeah. It's and by the way, I think there's very few sunlight scenes, so like it's all nights, so it's like it's not 8 days, it's 8 nights. So I imagine suddenly the sleeplessness starts making a lot more sense.
Oh, it does, yeah. My favorite memory was we just my AD was a sweetheart and she was a badass, and she's my favorite AD I ever worked with. That was Tiana, and we just gave her the key to the house, and we were like, every morning you're gonna have to physically drag everybody out of bed. So she literally like physically walked in everybody's room in the morning like the army and was like, let's go, because we get like.
What'd you do? You rented a house and it was like camp basically for.
Well, that's my house, the Flop. And it's like a grown man clubhouse. Like half the cast stayed at the Flop, and then the other half we got like a big Airbnb for. And she would like personally go and wake everybody up because the time we had to work under was crazy. But I will tell you this: I think an aspect of being completely underslept and completely overwhelmed, there's nothing that makes those situations more real. And I think the one thing me, my brothers, and just about everybody we casted has in common is the ability to just talk the way people talk and show a certain intensity in their eyes rather than kind of perform something in like a contrived Shakespearean way.
Yeah, you most of all. Your naturalism, you were the star of the movie, but also that performance like really carried the movie, I thought.
Oh, thank you.
So much so, I was like, I'm looking forward to watching Kevin fight this guy. Kevin didn't get to fight the guy.
Pick on somebody your own size. The fuck is the matter with you? Well, at least that's where you thought it was headed. That was the intention.
Why else is the main character jacked?
Yeah, well, here's the interesting thing about body types in film. The third kill victim, she's like the female me. She's Italian, Staten Island girl. She's fantastic, right?
Are you Italian?
I'm Italian and Puerto Rican.
Now, who discovered America? An Italian, right?
And she's like my favorite actress to work with in the world. So that's Olivia Jane, and she's wonderful. So I brought her to casting, and I was like, can we do a chemistry read and see if she could play my girlfriend? And they said no to that. So I was like, but find something else for her because she's great. So then, she ended up being one of the kill victims, and it worked out perfectly. Body types in movie. They do not like, and I'm not even going to say this is like the assault on masculinity thing. It's just the way we perceive things visually. Yeah. ideally, yes. Everybody was like, if you were not the guy that put this together, you would have been recast as the lead, because why the fuck does the Uber driver have muscles? And my answer to that was, well, when I was an Uber driver, because I was broke and I
thought you were an Uber driver. 'Cause
Yeah.
there were so many scenarios that were like, this is just a real scenario.
Yeah. When I was an Uber driver and I was broke and I was down on my luck and I was self-loathing about how I hate my house and I hate my car and I hate being an Uber driver, I was still jacked. It did nothing for me. So the idea that there's got to be a stereotype of what we think the Uber driver stereotype is, and there is no stereotype for an Uber driver. It could be anybody who needs extra money and pulls up the app on their phone. But generally, they do not like the idea of someone who looks physically strong, because they don't think the audience believes that that person can be sensitive. And similarly with women, a lot of times in casting, if I wanted to cast a girl who had really great chops, but she had double D boobs, they were like, she can't be the lead because we have a hard time believing that she ever feels insecure. She should be the mean girl that makes the lead actress with A cups feel insecure.
I had a screenwriting mentor, somebody run a draft by him, and he was like, well, the problem is this whole thing seems really contrived and unrealistic. And they were like, well, it's not. It's based on my real life. And he was like, it still seems
shrug.
It doesn't really, I'm not like, oh, okay, never mind then. Like, I guess what I'm trying to communicate is like, regardless of how chaotic reality is, it's like, as viewers, we demand some coherence or for it to confirm our priors or something like that.
Yeah, I suppose, but I also think this industry in particular, it molds everybody's thinking into like one consciousness, and they perceive everything the same way.
There's trends like Timothy Chalamet types, like,
yeah.
What was that? There was like a natural disaster movie with The Rock many years ago. But I remember he was at his absolute biggest. Yes, he's playing an action hero, but he was big for an action hero. He was like twice the size of a typical action hero. This is enormous. And I remember, like, he got in a tank at one point, or like in a car. He had to like drive a car. I thought it was like gonna be the Flintstones car. It just like tipped over.
Are you laughing at me while I'm driving my automobile?
Do you find something comical about my appearance when I'm driving my automobile?
Yeah.
Well, I think of it like the Stallone thing. I mean, it was even present back in the 70s, the idea that don't tell me this guy with muscles is down on his luck and has a low self-esteem, because we don't buy it. And that's one thing that like kind of Stallone paved the way for, was everybody feels emotions and every character can express sensitivities no matter how he's built.
And you're an unusually good actor, though, for your body type. Like, if you were doing a big lineup of guys with your body type that also had chops, it'd be few and far between, probably.
Oh, my
So,
gosh.
like,
You have no idea how bad it gets. One of my favorite rappers who's also a filmmaker, like I grew up listening to every one of this guy's songs, and he called me and he's like, I'm doing a film and I got a part that is just perfect for you. And I'm like, what is it? And he's like, a rapist. He's like, because you got that build and you got that all-American kind of, and he didn't finish his sentence. And I'm like, what, that all-American rape look?
I'll take the rapists for 200. That's therapists.
That mentality definitely has taken over. That in the 80s, you still might have been able to be Cobra if you were built like me. But today, depending on your point of view, you might think that people that look like me, they're just for harassing women in the club in a scene.
you're out of style. The body type's out of style at the moment. Anyway.
I think so. I pretty much did mold myself like an action figure, and then I realized it was too late to do that and still be cool. And now
It'll come back. It always does, but I think you're right that there's like resentment for that body type or something right now. It comes with some expectation of like, is he a villain? Which I didn't get any kind of, is he a villain? I had the question, have you ever driven for Uber? So I was on the same line.
And I depicted exactly what it's like. A night of driving Uber is depicted the way we depicted it in the montage scene of the character driving Uber. It is that obnoxious.
You got no idea what we're getting into for the night. You got no idea.
Yo! Why does everybody that goes to college act like this? It's like part of fucking enrollment?
That felt very sincere.
Picking up too many drunk people in one evening in your vehicle.
You were able to get tits in the movie, but it's during a very effective horror sequence. It's like, we'll give you the heebie-jeebies. So they're not gratuitous tits. The whole thing, when you said like, well, there was the Terrifier thing, and so that kind of shows that there's an audience, and I feel like this is like a tale as old as time with movies. Going back to Trauma, Roger Corman, Redbox, like there's always been this question of like, if I was able to shoot a movie quickly and for not a lot of money, and I could turn a small profit on it, would that, like, is there a business model for that? And it seems like since movies have come out, there's been, or at least since the 60s and 70s, there's been kind of like, there's always some way to like flip a buck with a smaller budget movie. So much so I keep wondering, like, when are they going to lower these budgets for like commercial films?
Yeah, I think they need to, because there's only so much money in the bucket now. Like if Superman can only make $500 million, then you have to lower Superman's budget.
Yeah, it comes and goes, particularly when mainstream Hollywood films are underserving and the audience finally lets it be known that they feel underserved by Hollywood. Because I attempted my first feature when I was 19.
The film never got finished. I must have dropped 15 pounds to play one of the nerds, put Matt, his family, a camera guy from Fox News, and everyone involved through a series of torturous 14-hour shoots, and the fucking thing never made it. Just thinking about it makes me want to put a gun to my fucking head.
And at that time, I called the only person that was older than me in the New York, Connecticut area that I knew that made films, which was Mike Levy. So I call Mike and I'm like, Mike, can you come in and direct a portion of this for me? It's my first time directing. We're gonna do it in Long Island. Can you just help out? And Mike was great, and he showed me the ropes, and he's a good dude, and I speak to him kind of infrequently, but at that time, he was the only guy I knew that was doing movies. He had a crew called Fuzz on the Lens Productions, still does. And I would chase them around New York when I was a kid. And I'm like, yo, can you meet me in Queens? Can you meet me in Brooklyn? I got an idea. I really think this is the one. Can I bring it to your guys' attention? And he never really fully had the patience for it, but he pretended like he did for me. And then he did come and help me direct my first attempt at a feature. So while we were doing that attempt at a feature in 2016, I believe he had just wrapped Terrifier, because he was producing it and he starred in it. So when I first saw Terrifier on Netflix, I might have called him and said, like, oh, look at, that's awesome. You guys did this clown movie. Good for you. And I had no clue really that it was already, it was getting so much attention. People were becoming real cult fans of it. By the time they did the second one, I was like, oh, this thing's about to take over the mic in them. This is about to take over the world. So Terrifier was a totally different experience for me. And from my perspective, what had happened was right at that time, what was Hollywood doing? They brought back Michael Myers and made sure in current Hollywood fashion that they were going to do a trilogy. The first was going to mimic the themes of Me Too, because we need that in a Michael Myers movie. The second was going to mimic some of the themes of Black Lives Matter, because that's relevant. We always feel we need that in a Michael Myers movie. And the third was going to be like the impact of the school shooter, because there was a lot of school shootings going on. I think the second one, the second Terrifier, hit the same time that third and final of that disastrous new Michael Myers series failed to impress. And I think it did better at the box office than that. And it was just one of those instances where Hollywood was like, all we wanted was Michael Myers to stab people. You didn't deliver that, but these guys did. And it was off to the races from there.
Or I remember Terrifier 3 outperformed in theaters, outperformed Joker 2, which is, of the two clown movies.
Yeah, people they're just tired of it. They're tired of the contrived nature of these movies.
One of the reasons that the concept is scary is because there's kind of this universal understanding that once you're in a car and the doors are shut and the car is moving with a bad person, you're pretty much fucked. Like, unless police know that car is a villainous car and let's go stop them, you're pretty much fucked. Or if you have a weapon or something. Any scene where the girl is going like, I'd like to pull over, I'd like to get out, I'd like to, that's always going to be, like, that'll always haunt everybody's nightmares.
Yeah, the thing we aim to do is just put you in the female point of view. What's it really like to be a woman that's getting in a strange man's car? Because I drove Uber for like 2-3 years, and in between trying to fund my own movies and crashing my finances, I was financially ruined. Financially ruined my life 3 times over to make 3 feature films. And I was driving Uber, and at least 10 times a night, a woman would get in the car, and the first thing she'd ask me is if I was going to kill her. So that really showed me, I'm like, oh, this is a really, really prevalent fear. And then my brother Rocky, who was a producer on it, he goes, if Freddy Krueger made you afraid to go to sleep, and Jason made you afraid of a lake, and Psycho made you afraid to get in the shower, there's no movie that wants to capitalize on this, because to my knowledge, there's really only one mainstream drive share killer movie, and it was this weird interactive social media movie. It wasn't a movie that treated it like a slasher.
There's a really great kill with a headrest in this movie. Spoilers.
Yeah, I never. That was pretty creative. I never thought of
I've
that.
not seen that before. The raspy voiced detective that is double your size, and you decided to have a camera setup that showed that too. By the way,
He is humongous. He might be like 6. Dude, that guy might actually be like 6'6". He's actually fucking huge.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
he has the perfect understanding detective voice.
I'm sure you know, but a case like this is never closed. And if we hear anything, we'll look into it.
so much so I went to IMDb and I was like, have I seen this guy in a different? I feel like I've totally seen this guy. And I'm like, am I just thinking of Forrest Whitaker from Rogue One or something?
He's,
We'll all be dead before the Republic is back, and yet here we are.
Yeah, no, that's Miguel Matos, and he just looks like he's destined to be in CSI, and I think he's going to be at some point. So I was like, yeah,
He's got to be. I feel like he already has been, even though he hasn't been. There was only one scene in the whole movie where a woman begged you to fuck her. So I thought that was pretty good restraint on your part.
That happened? What happened? I forgot.
Yeah, when you're talking to the blonde at the door, and she's like, "Come on," you're like, "No, I have no time."
Did we do that in that movie?
Oh, come on. All you do is drive. Just come back to bed for a few hours, and then you can drive.
If I get back into bed with you, I'm not getting out.
Now I get 3 hours of sleep. Oh my God, see, that's how real it is. Yeah, no, I just remembered that scene. Yeah, that's how real it is. That's my life.
I'm restricted. I don't have time for all these requests. Oh, cop cars. Did you get the cooperation of the police on this one?
Yeah, we did, because my brother's girlfriend, Caroline McNabola, produced it and named it, and then her father, like, I think he like runs half the state. He's in politics or something like that. So we were like, I don't know how the hell we're going to pull off a police station. I don't think we had the budget to rent one of those like sound stations that are already set up to look like a police station in New York. So she asked him if he could just let us use a government building and if you can get the police to go along with it. And he did. So yeah,
Nice.
yeah, she produced the fuck out of it.
Well, look, you got the movie made, and it's out there and people can see it. And so Tubi, Amazon, his name is Kevin Savo. The movie is called Rerouting. You can see it on Amazon, Tubi, and other platforms. Kevin, another question I want to put to rest before we wrap this thing up. Some people were like, I think he's kidding around. I don't think he's real. I think he's doing some kind of satire. They've now listened to 2 hours. You've laid out your case. I think you've shown your humanity, sir. Just be clear to everybody. There was never any parody or any attempt at parody here. You were just sleep deprived.
Sleep deprived, and I have a father who is like George Costanza in real life, and unfortunately, I was molded that way, so I really only know how to express myself this intensely. And I'm working on ridding myself of that, but there's only so much I could do. My dad tells me, he tells his current woman, he says he stops, he's got a process now, and he says, I call it like my motor running too hard, and I say I'm putting the car away and I'm putting it in the garage now, and I'm like, okay, whatever the fuck that means. I'm trying to.
Sometimes you gotta visualize.
I'm trying to do the same in my own life. But yeah, listen, you guys are fantastic. Your content is great. Box Max in particular is excellent. Though I will say, just admittedly, still how I feel, I didn't realize you guys were as good as you were until I looked at everything besides the James Rolfe content. That's just my style.
Everything that's good about you is not going to be prominent, and everything that's a little bit mischievous and bad about you, that's going to be what you'll be most famous
Yeah, pretty
for.
much. And then also the way you roasted me on that podcast, the first thing it brought to mind was a couple of weeks ago, this like 20-year-old kid at my job lost it on like my 36-year-old manager, and he's like, this is ridiculous, they called me into work, I was playing video games, I ain't never had shit, and now I gotta come to this job. And my manager's just going, yeah, okay, yeah, I understand, okay, cool. And I asked my manager, I'm like, when someone younger than you challenges you, how do you not snap and wring the kid's neck? And he was like, dude, when you reach my age, anybody saying anything to you, like, if they're more than 10 years younger than you, you just can't even take it seriously. And that's exactly how I felt watching you guys roast me. I'm like,
unfortunately, the girlfriend wanted to make love, which I did allow her to do.
these guys are pretty all right, man.
I think so. It was like he's a kid.
I think we made something beautiful together.
I think we've built something beautiful here together.
I'm relieved to know that 30 is still young, because you know how weird things get right before 30. You're like, oh my God, this is it.
30s were I had a great 30s. What about you, EJ? Did you enjoy your 30s?
Oh, absolutely. That's where I was trying to have all my children in my 30s, but one slipped into my 40s.
It is when we kind of transitioned out of features and into a whole lot of YouTube But that's been kind of rewarding too, because you also get to have immediate like gratification for creating something, even when the audience is relatively small. It's still, like I said, it's a couple thousand people.
No, you guys have an excellent audience. I was telling you when we spoke personally, I can see the clear distinction in your comments between like the Reddit people and the real James haters and your core audience. You guys have a really good core audience, and I'm very impressed with the fact that for 15,000 subscribers, it almost feels like it doesn't even need to be any bigger than that, because
you don't want it to be.
Well, so often, and no, but I hope it does, because another unfortunate thing about modern algorithms is I think like I look at something like Red Cow and I'm like, this probably would have been like 500,000 subs if it came out 20 years ago. But either way, oftentimes 15,000 subs means 800 to 1,000 active viewers, and the rest just subscribed and forgot about it. Feels like all 15,000 of your people are there.
Yeah, I'm so glad you noticed that, because I want good fans. I don't want shitty fans. Like, if you're only here for like one thing, or you're only here for like, whatever. If you just want me to say everything you agree with, I'm not going to. I think we have fans that are like, they really seem to love most of the content. And then maybe like there's 10% that they chafe with. And I'm like, that's kind of good for you. Maybe you'll stick, and they tend to stick around. All right, Kevin. Well, this was a lot of fun. Thank you for having a sense of humor, being such a good sport, letting us watch your movie and talk to you about it. Look, when we make another feature, if Gymmy ain't in it, I'm not making it.
Appreciate it.
So.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.